Thank you, Bob. We're going to take some questions and answers. I'd like to ask the persons who wish to ask questions, as Bob points you out, to come up here and use the microphone up front. Bob?
Seems to be very little question asking to be done after that.
I wonder if,
Sir.
I'd be curious how many people here have read the book.
Well, I'm sure you've all read it in preparation. You all read the announcement. The book was put on the shelves, I believe, only about 12 days ago. So it's doubtful that very many have. And while I must admit I don't want to make Dr. Skinner rich, I would advise you to read this book much as young medical students study corpses for the purposes of pathology. Yes, I've been requested to remind you, please come up and use the mic. Sir.
Yes, it was only a small point you made at the very end, but I'd like you to clarify exactly what you mean, because I'm a pediatrician and I have strong feelings about this, about when you accuse people of tranquilizing young children that don't behave properly.
I don't have my reference with me, unfortunately, but I'll be happy to get it for you and grab me after.
But this is a very controversial point, and I think that it's been misrepresented to the lay public.
Well, I do not know whether or not, under certain circumstances, it's medically advisable to tranquilize a child.
It's not tranquilizing.
Well, I have been instructed that it's scopolamine which is used. I'm an organic research chemist. And
It's dexedrine that's used.
fine, it's dexedrine.
But dexedrine is a stimulant, so therefore it's not tranquilizing.
Well, be that as it may, my concern was not with the medical aspects thereof. If I had a boisterous child to the point of that boisterousness interfering with his life, I would certainly ask a physician, can he do something? Or if I had a child who was so quiet that he was not learning, I would ask a physician to do something. But I would ask. I would not let Big Brother put it into his lunch milk.
I don't think that's how is Big Brother doing it unless a doctor prescribes it?
We would have to debate that outside of this particular audience, but since you bring the point up, I will attempt to give you the reference on which I base this claim after I finish with the remainder of the questions. Okay?
Would you amplify what you mean by opposing such as Skinner's ideas any way that you wish?
Yes, perhaps I should be careful there because I could be misread. If we reverse the situation and put ourselves in Skinner's place, the answer to the gentleman's question is easy. We all know how to take care of troublemakers. Of course, we libertarians cannot adopt that sort of a policy. I admit that it would give me a great deal of emotional catharsis to indulge in certain types of physical activity against Dr. Skinner. But that would refute everything else I believe in. I believe that the literature of freedom and dignity, which he condemns so thoroughly, is sufficiently strong to refute anything he would say. And if I'm mistaken, if my confidence in you I see out here is misplaced, if you can't refute Skinner, then there's no hope for you anyway. You will refute him in the realm of ideas. And I would suggest that you all go ahead and do so. That's the best answer I can give.
Yeah, without detracting from your arguments concerning Mr. Skinner's politics, I have recently noticed a number of articles in which they have pointed out that hospitals for the very sick which were run on behaviorist principles, seem to be working. The system being that instead of giving the patients candy, cigarettes and whatnot, they earned them in the form of tokens, which were given them for...
Bananas.
Yes, right.
It is quite true that one can do some marvelous things with the principles of behaviorism. I just, before preparing this speech, I finished Watson's book on the subject, from which much of Skinner's own work derives. If by any chance anyone here should ever want to teach a pig to roller skate, I recommend the psychology of behavior. No, but you can do it. You can do it. So far as the hospitals are concerned, I would not deny that under some circumstances, a patient who may feel himself helpless would welcome the opportunity, even in a situation which might be fatal, to earn something, to do something. The most horrible thing about being sick is a sense of inefficacy. My answer is, so what? In fact, there are pages in this book in which you'll find true psychological principles. They may be trite, they may be cribbed from someone else. Remember, I'm here to attack this book, not to defend it. But the mere fact that some aspects of behaviorism have been shown to be correct does not defend Skinner's politics. Sir?
Yeah, this isn't really a question. I just wanted to suggest to those people who are going to be trying to refute Skinner's ideas that there's a very well-done attack on the position, written, I think, long before Skinner started publishing, which is called The Abolition of Man by C.S. Lewis.
Yes. Yes, you're quite correct. Thank you for reminding me. I didn't put that in even though I ran across it. In addition, I would like to recommend something else to you. I'm glad the gentleman brought up the question of books. A book which I unreservedly recommend. The type of world that Skinner is looking for has been depicted in a novel published last year. I am referring to the novel entitled This Perfect Day by Ira Levin. Why, I see I've recommended something I didn't have to recommend. In case any of you have not read this thing, leave now. You won't hurt my feelings. Leave now, go get it, and go home and read it. Sir.
Speaking of books, I noticed that in your introduction you used the very phrase that Arthur Kessler had used in terms of the idea of an independent consciousness.
The ghost in the machine.
The ghost in the machine. However, I would want you to comment with respect to this excellent book of Kessler's, which, so to speak, attacks the behaviorist school from an interesting approach, which it differs, yet is a companion to, shall we say, the objectivist school and Ayn Rand's approach, or Nathaniel Brandon's approach to consciousness. Kessler, however, winds up with a rather dubious conclusion, and it seems to be a variant of what you might call the Kenneth Clark school, which is yet another intervention into man's consciousness. Kenneth Clark being a liberal and a progressive, and I don't use those with pejorative connotations, has, like all progressive or thinking human beings, is worried about the ultimate power that resides in the Attilas of the world. And he has made the suggestion, I don't have to go on and make I just want, I'll be through in just a moment. He has gone on to make a suggestion that the leaders of the world be chemically influenced so as to make them a little more docile and therefore not pressing the button which obliviates us all. I wonder if you could comment about the Clark aspect and the Kessler conclusion, also a progressive and enormously
frightening,
interesting human being.
Well, you're getting, unfortunately, into an area of my ignorance. I'm by no means a psychologist. And I have the suspicion that Ayn Rand would just go right out of her tree if you compared Kessler's opinions to hers. Now, Kessler does attack behaviorism in his work, The Ghost in the Machine. No question about it. I am not sure that he attacks it on reasonable grounds. He contends that the work of Watson, Skinner, other behaviorists is merely the apotheosis of the trivial. If I kick you, you're going to move your leg back. I need a psychologist to tell me this. As for Dr. Clark, who is indeed a learned man, and far more learned in psychology than I am, I am astonished that he would fail to see the problem with which the Greeks and the Romans grappled so many years ago. Like many others, like Skinner, who tells us that the ideas of Plato are worthless for today. He fails to realize that his is not the first generation that had this difficulty. Fine, we're going to dose the politicians with drugs. I think half of them are hopped up most of the time. Anyway, but okay, who's going to put the syringe in? Who's going to bell this cat? I think the idea is absurd. Best answer I can give you.
Mr. Baker, do people have a right to voluntarily contract away their future freedom to live in one of Mr. Skinner's walled into proprietary communities and to raise children under that kind of control?
Interesting question. I'm not sure I know the answer to this. I've thought about it, but I haven't completely made up my mind. In the abstract, I suppose that I couldn't give you any objection to a man freely putting himself into what in effect would be slavery, particularly if you contract away all right to change it. I make a contract to work with you for the rest of my natural life. I suppose I can't give you an objection in the abstract. In practice, it is not permitted. 800 years of Anglo-Saxon common law forbid it. You can't do it. The assumption being, and I think it's a reasonable one, that the freedom to change your mind about something is one which must be retained. Now, I'm not going to justify that at this point. This isn't a legal lecture. But I will move on to the second question you gave because it touches on something I'm going to discuss tomorrow. The raising of children according to this scheme. I wish to remind you that a human being is not property. And the fruit of your loins, this is a human being. You have no right to warp a child's mind.
Have you read Walden 2?
Yes, I did not discuss Walden 2 here, which I'm glad was brought up. This purports to be a novel. It's a novel without an awful lot of plot, but Skinner does mention it in this book, and I recommend it as a companion to this, not so much because it'll hold your interest, the thing will put you to sleep, but, very importantly, he says specifically that Walden 2 is constructed along the lines of the behavior technology that he advocates in Beyond Freedom and Dignity. And I ask you to pay particular attention to the leader of the intentional community in Walden 2. It is obviously Skinner. Now, all of what I've said, of course, you should check for yourselves. See, when reading Walden 2, if Skinner does not want a dictatorship in his own image. And we seem to... Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, sir. Certainly.
Dr. Baker, going back to one of your previous things, if I decide that that man sitting over there at the end of that row is warping his child's mind, do I have a right to take the child and raise him as my own son? Take the child from his parents.
From his parents. Who let this young man in? The parents warped your mind. That's what. Well, all teasing aside, the question's an excellent one, of course, and does put you somewhat on the spot. But I think I can at least give a reasonable approach to it. One of the premises of the question is that, in fact, we have a warping of the mind. Notice I haven't defined what warping of the mind means. I am, for the purposes of this demonstration, assuming it involves a violation of rights. The principle is not too difficult. The question is not what you think, but what the facts are. If you're mistaken in your thinking, there will be consequences for you later on. But if, in fact, I observe a violation of rights, I say I have the right, though not the duty, to prevent it, to stop it. and to prevent or stop it by all reasonable means. Perhaps shooting the father is going a little far. Whether or not you're correct in your assertion that the right is being violated is an utterly different matter. Sir.
Just like to give an opinion. The collectivization, which you term fascism, I believe will come about through the public health sector. Year after year, there has been a bill introduced in Albany to define public health as the, quote, mental, physical, and social well-being of all the individuals of the state, of all the people of the state, both individually and collectively. Now, public health is defined in such terms. This would cover every aspect of an individual's life, his every action, and therefore the full powers of the police state can be brought forth through the public health law. Now, we have provided the foundation for this through compulsory vaccination, fluoridation followed from compulsory vaccination, and the things that you've discussed today, for example, the tranquilizers or the stimulants or whatever you want to call
Which
them,
was
school
disputed.
children, is a further carryover of this. So unless we really put our foot down in this area, in this public health area, this collectivization will be achieved, and it will be achieved very soon, very rapidly.
You are quite correct, sir, and thank you for bringing it out. The so-called police power, as the lawyers use the phrase, has been extended to a point where, for example, in this state today, it is possible, without a jury trial, without even being represented, for two licensed psychiatrists, to commit you for an indefinite period to a mental institution. Now, this is frightening, sir.
Yeah, forgive me for pushing you further into your next speech, but I'm still not quite satisfied. I want to know...
I'm not very satisfied with it either.
Yeah, that's the problem. Well, what I want to know is when you say, if as a matter of fact I am warping my child's mind, do you mean if as a matter of fact I am coercing him, or if as a matter of fact I am acting within what would normally be my right, saying to him, you can go out that door anytime you want to, but as long as you're in the door, I'll reward you for certain things, punish you for other things, persuade you of certain ideas, and thus make you into a convinced Skinner.
Okay, I resist the push because that is particularly a topic I'm going to take up tomorrow. Now, come back tomorrow and see if Pauline is saved from the locomotive.
My question would be slightly similar to this. Supposing a parent is in fact warping the child's mind, and he is living in one of Skinner's communities or whatever, his projects, but the kid chooses to stay with the parent by, voluntarily, maybe the kid loves the parent or something like that.
This kid is sick, yeah. Well, again, same answer. I am going to discuss this tomorrow, but if you do want a preview, tomorrow I am going to discuss how a youngster goes about firing his parents.
I'd like to know if there's been a book or a pamphlet written depicting all of these things collectively, one book. The tranquilizers, becoming a big brother.
Well, in the mental health area, probably the best, you'll get more from others than you will from me, but probably the best thing I've run across is Tom Zaz's The Manufacture of Madness. There seem to be some people who agree with me there. But that's probably the best I can do for you on that. Dr. Zaz spells his name S-Z-A. And you can find most of his works in the public library. Sir.
Maybe getting into North lecture again. What are the rights of children? Are they the same as the rights of adults? So
Tune in tomorrow. And we seem to have run out of a good deal of steam. Gary?